vacationing stuff, I think. So we're still in Jude. That's where we've been landing for quite a while. I will keep showing this over and over today. So I'm going to be using the same deck, the PowerPoint slides that I used from last week. I'll use the same deck today, and I'll probably use the same deck a little bit maybe next week. So and I'm going to be flipping through a lot of them real fast. So if for some reason you weren't here last week or whatever, just know that they're all the slides, the materials on that one deck. All right, so let's just read through. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to Jude. We're going to be camped in the first 8 verses. So I just want to read through that quickly. Anthony's already covered the first 5, and then we're going to be camped today in 6, 7, and 8. So those are the 3 that we're really going to be camped in. And that's where we were last week. We're going to try and get at least through 6 and probably 7 today. So Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to those who were called beloved in God the Father and kept for Jesus Christ. May mercy, peace, and love be multiplied to you. Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. For certain people have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were designated for this condemnation, ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into sensuality and deny our only Master and Lord, Jesus Christ. Now I want to remind you, although you once fully knew it, that Jesus, who saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. And this is where we're going to be camping today. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, Jesus has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. Yet in like manner, these people also rely on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. If you remember last week, I said those 3 things. Defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. This is from the English Standard Version, the ESV. So that's the text that I'm usually using that's up on the slide. So if there's a little bit of variation in what you have, just know that as well. All right, so today we talked about and the angels. So we're going to be talking about the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling. So what we believe that Jude is referencing here, and I'm going to show this as we go through this, is referring back to Genesis 6. Genesis was written by who? By Moses. Was probably written sometime around 1400 BC, give or take 100 years, depending on if you're an early or late dater, but it was written around 1400 or so. So just kind of remember that in the background as well. All right, so Genesis 6, 1 through 3, this is 1 through 3. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then God said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. I talked a little bit last week about how that's a very odd statement, that because of that first sentence, God says the second sentence. All right? So keep that thought in mind as well. Genesis 4, chapter 6, verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into, had sex with, the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart were only evil continually. On that sentence, just notice, kind of highlight the words, every, only, and continually. Okay? And Yahweh regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So Yahweh said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man, animals, creeping things, and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made him. We talked quite a bit last week about how could God have this creation, and he gets to a point that he is so grieved. with his creation that he wished that he had never done it, and he's going to blot it out. What would have happened to make him feel that way, or to make this statement? All right, so now then, we got into this pretty heavy last week about the Sethite interpretation of Genesis 6:1-4. We talked about how there was Adam and Eve, who produced Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Abel was replaced by Seth, so now there's Cain and Seth. And that's the two lines of the lineage. From therefore, all humankind come from Cain and Seth. Who is bad? Cain is bad. Seth is good. All right? So there's a bad side. The Cain side is the bad side. Seth's side is the good side. So there is a Sethite interpretation of Genesis 6:1-4. And it goes like this. It's the predominant approach to explain that passage today. If you go around churches today, denominations today, it is the predominant approach to explain Genesis 6:1-4. It refuses to take the passage at face value. It states the passage describes forbidden intermarriage between the godly men of Seth and the ungodly women of Cain. The line of Seth was to remain pure and separate from the evil lineage of Cain. Part of the rationale is in Genesis 4:26. This is when Adam and Eve are able, when Seth is born, and Eve is talking about how God replaced Abel with Seth. And in that same passage, at the end of it, it says, then man did call upon the name of the Lord. So that's part of the rationale for why this approach was used. All right, so there, and I am skimming over this at like 9,000 miles an hour. There's a lot more, and it gets a lot deeper, but that's the primary thing. So here are the flaws to that. These, again, just a few of the flaws related specifically to what's been said. First of all, Genesis 4:26, where it says, never states that the only people who called on the name of the Lord were men from Seth's lineage. It doesn't say that. You have to infer that. It doesn't say that in the passage. The view fails to explain the Nephilim, completely ignores verse 4. Doesn't say anything about it because it can't. That view can't answer verse 4. The text never calls the women in the episode daughters of Cain. The text doesn't say that. You have to infer it. They are rather daughters of humankind. There is no command in the text regarding marriages or prohibition against marrying certain persons. There are later, after all the laws come out, and we now have the Israelites and the Jews, and there's a thing about intermarriage there. But at this point, there are no restrictions about intermarriage. Nothing in the passage or anywhere else in the Bible identifies people who come from Seth's lineage with descriptive phrases, sons of God. Go looking for it. If you find it, let me know. It's not there. Okay. And this interpretation didn't show up until 200 AD. Now, what that should tell you is that the people of Israel, the ancient Israelites, all the way up until 1st century through Second Temple Judaism, they heard nothing of this. This doesn't mean anything to them. And we talked about how if you go back and ask anybody that was an ancient Israelite or a Second Temple Jew, what brought about chaos, what brought evil into the world, why the world was what it was. Yes, the fall, but also the sin of the Watchers that we're going to get into, and the Tower of Babel. Those three things, which brought in death, evil, and chaos. Okay. Now, the story of the sin of the Watchers, Enoch 6-16. We talked a lot last week, and I'm not going to get into it. It's on the video. We talked a lot about books that are non-canonical. First Enoch is one of those books. It's a pseudepigrapha. And so if you want to go back and know more about that, I'm not going to rehash all of that today. But today we're going to be camping in First Enoch 6-16. Three things. So we're going to be talking, and so I don't want to get too confused. Jude 6, Genesis 6, and then First Enoch 6-16. And I get tongue-tied sometimes, so if I get those mixed up, I just want you to know that's the three places where we're really camping today, talking about these fallen angels. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase these 10 chapters in 4 bullet points. Okay, because I just don't have time to read all of it to you and to get deeply into it. So I've done the best that I can to summarize, and like Anthony said starting this out, really what we're trying to do is getting you thinking and getting you maybe excited about digging into this deeper yourself and seeing how this ties together, because we're going to do that today, how this ties together through Scripture. All right. And the days of Jared, why is that important? Who was Jared? This is the pop test. Anybody remember who Jared was? He's the father of Noah. Of Enoch. Jared's the father of Enoch, all right? See, I would have failed the pop test. So in the days of Jared, 200 angels under the leadership of Samhaza, and I can't pronounce these terms very well, Samhaza and Azazel, filled with the lust for the beautiful daughters of men, descended on Mount Hermon and took human women as wives. Okay, this is out of this passage in 1 Enoch. Their children, the Nephilim, ravaged the earth, and the falling angels taught men forbidden knowledge and all kinds of sin. And when you get into the actual description, it lays out what a lot of those forms of knowledge, crafts of war, making a metal swords, jewelry, customs. There's a lot of things that it all boils into that later that's used for that creates all kinds of sin. The fallen angels were therefore responsible for the total corruption of the world, on account of which God sent the flood. So chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, where we're talking about those fallen angels and what's going on. What happens in chapter 7? The flood. Okay, so chapter 6 comes right before the flood in chapter 7. The watchers, sons of God, were punished by being bound under the earth until the day of judgment, when they will be cast into Gehenna. All right. I just kind of flew through that. I'm just trying to give you a summary of what's in 1 Enoch. Now we're going to start getting into some more of the actual canonized text, but I wanted you to see this wording and know that, like we talked about last week, First Enoch was widely accepted. It was definitely read and understood by all the writers of the New Testament. And we're going to see times when it is used, and Jude and Peter, and we're going to see where Peter, Jude, and Paul all use things from 1 Enoch. Okay?
Jess,
Uh-huh.
one question. You may have already explained this.
Uh-huh.
First Enoch is, what is it? Who wrote it?
It wasn't.
Is it just a historian? Is it, give me some background.
Okay, so I don't know how much background you want, but so I'll try and summarize a lot of it. First Enoch was not written by Enoch. Okay, obviously it's not, and that's why it's called a pseudepigrapha. That's what we talked about last week. So there's other texts that are canon that are in the Bible that were not written by the original, like Job is an example of that. Job was not written by Job. So there's other books in the Bible, Joshua. There's other books that were not written by the original author. And
So
if
we
you
don't have Enoch in the Bible.
do what?
This one is not in the Bible. Because
It's not canon. Okay, it is not canon. First Enoch is not canon. It was discovered. There's text of Enoch, First Enoch, that were found with all the other texts that are in the Bible with the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's how we have proof, archaeological proof, that the people that wrote the first New Testament in the first century had that material available to it. And if you go and read First Enoch, if you go through and read the whole thing, you're going to see things that you will later, as you begin to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and so forth, you're going to see things popping out that you could tell that the writers, and what the writers, all the writers of the New Testament, every one of them were Second Temple Jews. Okay? So that's something we have to understand. So they had all of this material made available to them, and they clearly used it. Okay? I'm going to talk more about that kind of towards the end, but that's a great question. It's something we have covered, and I want to say right now that if you have some apprehension about what I'm saying today, I had a lot of apprehension when I first started reading about this. the more I read into it, the more I studied into it, and the more I started seeing the dots connecting, the clearer it became. So when we were talking about doubting today, and Wade's lesson, that's doubting is okay. That's perfectly not only acceptable, it's good, because you need to be able to understand and see the reason why the stuff falls in line. So let me keep going, because I want you to start seeing how this ties together. All right. Okay, so that was a very, very brief, quick summary of the first 10 chapters within 1 Enoch. I'm going to jump to 1 Enoch 10, and I'm actually going to, now this is actual text coming out of 1 Enoch. So 4 through 6. And again the Lord said to Raphael, and this is going to be the Lord, this is Yahweh, giving commands to 3 of his top angels. And the names you're all going to recognize. Okay? And the Lord said to Raphael, bind a Sezel at hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and split open the desert which is in Dudal, and cast him in, and fill the hole by covering him with rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him live there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see the light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be hurled into the fire. Continuing on in 7 and 8. And heal the earth which the angels have ruined, and proclaim the healing of the earth, for I will restore the earth and heal the plague, that not all of the children of men may perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed, and have taught their sons. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. The all caps there I've added for emphasis. When the term watchers is used, if you remember in Daniel, you'll see that the phrase watchers is a biblical term. You'll see it in Daniel, and it's referring to angels. Okay? Because the watchers were angels that were assigned by Yahweh to watch over humankind.
But they also said that angels have sons.
Yes.
Those angels.
These angels. Here we're talking specifically about the 200 angels that descended from heaven under the leadership of how do you say it? Shemaza, however you want to say it. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at saying anything other than West Texas names. But the ones that descended under that leadership of the 200, they made this agreement on Mount Hermon to do this thing, to go and to take human women as wives, and to have children with them. Bizarre. Stay with me. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by these angels. To him ascribe all sin. Enoch, so continuing on, to Gabriel, said the Lord, proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication and the children of the watchers. Cause them to go against one another, that they may destroy each other in battle. Shorten their days. No request that the watchers, their fathers, the watchers, make of you shall be granted them on their behalf, for they hope to live an eternal life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. Quick note on this, the reason later in 1 Enoch, he goes on to explain how the watchers, once they're cast down into this prison, that they go to Enoch and want Enoch to go on their behalf to Yahweh and beg for forgiveness on their behalf, and that they're repentant. And God's saying, ain't happening, because great is your sin. All right? Continuing on. And the Lord said to Michael, so you get these 3 angels now, Raphael, Michael, go by Sajazi and his team, who have associated with women and have defiled themselves in all their uncleanness, when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones. Bind them fast for 70 generations under the heels of the earth, until the day of consummation of their judgment, and until the eternal judgment is accomplished. All right? Now, that's all far out, and you're all questioning, yeah, but this is 1 Enoch. Hang with me. All right, I'm going to jump a little bit farther. Last part that I'm going to get from 1 Enoch, chapter 15. And now the giants, this is the Nephilim, who are produced from the spirits in the flesh, in other words, well, let me go on, shall be called evil spirits on the earth, and shall live on the earth. Evil spirits have come out from their bodies, because they are both from men and from the holy watchers Their beginning is of primeval origin. So you have the original 200 angels that descend from heaven. They agree. They make this covenant between them. They're going to do this thing, even though they know what they're doing is a great sin, and they're going to pay for it. They agree to do it. They bind themselves, and they do this where? Mount Hermon. And so they come down and agree this thing. They do this thing. Once they have relations with women and children are born, those children are the giants. They're the Nephilim. Okay? They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. I'm jumping a little bit farther again in Enoch. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. So here's my summary. I have covered a ton of material, and I tried to do it in about 10 minutes. And here's a summary. Divine angels descend to take human wives. The angels teach forsaken secrets to humans. Their offspring produce the Nephilim. The Nephilim cause absolute havoc on earth. Yahweh imprisons the fallen angels, their parent, the fathers. The Nephilim begin to destroy each other. Evil spirits remain from the dead Nephilim. So the Nephilim, the giants, they have their fathers are divine, their mothers are human, they're flesh. As they begin to kill each other, and in the Enoch, when you read the whole description of how this all plays out, it's very lengthy. But as they begin to destroy each other, the flesh dies, but the spirit remains. And the spirit that remains is a divine spirit. That spirit remains. But it's on earth. So here we go. The evil spirits remain from that. That's why this whole pass over here, I'm sorry. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses, and these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and women because they have proceeded from them. Evil spirits remain from the dead Nephilim. Evil spirits continue to cause havoc on earth. This is why the ancient Israelites and Second Temple Jews believed the world is as it was at the time, because this is where evil enters into the world. This is their story. This is the story that they would have no problem scratching their heads about like we do. They would fully get this. They would understand this. Okay, back to Jude. Jude used the judgment of the watchers as a parallel type, this typology, to the false teachers that he is writing about. There is a direct relationship between the sons of God choosing to leave heaven and their vocation, assigned by Yahweh to come to earth and corrupt humanity by turning the hearts of humans against God and his will for humankind. This is why Jude thinks it's a good analogy to compare the angels that sinned to the false teachers, because the angels that sinned taught false teaching. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. That's right out of Jude 6. Jude 6 knows the story of the fallen watchers. Okay? Now hang with me. We're going to keep going. Leaving home and rejecting authority demonstrates a desire for autonomy. The angels that sin blaspheme God and diminish the loyalty of the rest of the heavenly host. Got your mouth open, Donna. You have a question? I'm beginning to watch Donna. I can tell.
Well, it's just that last sentence, Bob. The angels that sin
That's right.
The rest of the angels.
The rest of the angels. Because they are not doing as God created them to do. They're not doing their job that God assigned them to do. Because, have you ever thought about this? Angels have a choice too. Angels have a choice too. God's creation, all of God's creation, get to choose who their believing loyalty is to. Do you think Satan was the whole chapter 3 thing? How did that come about? Somebody didn't want to follow God. And that somebody was the one who had a conversation with Adam and Eve. It started the whole thing.
Yeah, and Jess is not saying you have to believe this.
Yeah.
What Jess is saying is, when Jude writes this to his readers, that's what all of them believe. They go back and they read Genesis chapter 6, where it says that angels descended on earth and took wives. They read that, and we read that. And then they read Enoch, and we don't read Enoch. And then when we get to Jude and we read this, we're like, okay, we're missing part of the story that Jude knew and that all of his readers knew. They had the whole Enoch story that we don't ever read or have been taught or understand. And so when Jude writes this, they're all like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. And not only is that exactly what happened, that's what Jude is saying these teachers in this congregation, that's what they're doing. And so all of the readers get it, and they understand the connection between the false teachers that they are seeing right there and the angels of before. That they get all of that, and we read Enoch and go,
Whoa.
whoa.
Hold the phone, Mabel. No, thank you, Anthony, for saying that. Just one thought. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Ian Fair made the same argument when he talked to us about Revelation.
Uh-huh.
He said they had found in the 20th century writings in the day, held away, that the people would understand the imagery in
Yes.
Revelations.
That's exactly
and
right.
that they're reading it now and saying, oh, well, maybe they did understand. It wasn't just, a prophecy that they weren't going to understand.
That's exactly.
He made the same point.
Yep. So, and I am not going to put myself in the same league as Ian Fair. I know him very well.
Don't do that.
I know him very well. But yes. So see, and within our brotherhood, though, within our tradition, we have typically left these things alone because we can't explain them, using our thought process for how we get to where, our systematic thought process of interpreting Scripture.
When was the canon determined?
The canon was determined, well, it depends on which one you're talking about. So I got into that quite a bit. Yeah, so there's the Torah, the original Torah, that canon by the Jews was probably around 400 BC.
Okay, so in other words, before the canon was determined, all of these books were
Yes.
just kind of out there, so people
Yes.
taught them or read them or whatever, and were familiar with those stories. But then once the canon was like the only thing that you should depend on, then we lost these other stories.
That's what I tried to portray last week, and I probably went through it too fast. Peter, which we're getting ready to get into, Peter and Jude were both written somewhere around 65
Last
AD.
week was Easter.
Oh, the week before. Sorry. We were, yeah. So, whenever, the last time we talked, Peter and Jude were written somewhere around 65, 66 AD. Okay? That was long before it was determined what books are canon. Before somebody said that's official, that's not official. That's why it's such a big deal to know that all of the material that are the writers of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Peter, just name them, all the way through, there was none of this canon stuff. But they used material that was available to them, and the Dead Sea Scroll proves that out. So when they found all of the 66 books of the Hebrew Bible, they also found, when I went last week and showed you the 54 books of the Apocrypha, all of that material was available with the Dead Sea Scroll. So the writers at Qumran, they knew that material, they used that material, just like if you're studying and presenting a class or doing a sermon, is it okay to look at something outside to help you with the text? Some form? Yeah, sure it is. Because what you're trying to do is find out more about the history, more about what was going on at the time, da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's exactly what they did. And First Enoch was very widely accepted.
Yeah, they read it as a history.
Yeah. So, and now I'm already, so that's okay. We will diverge. So, First Enoch is an expansion of Genesis. Genesis was written around 1400 BC. First Enoch was probably written, most academians, theologians will tell you, easily 200 BC, probably 300 BC. So somewhere between 300 to 200 BC is when First Enoch was written. Long after Genesis was written. It is an expansion of what was written in Genesis. Why is it an expansion? Because when Moses wrote what was going on in Genesis, those people had no problem with understanding this, just like what Anthony was saying. They didn't go to a whole lot of description because they didn't need to. People got it. And so First Enoch was written around 200 to 300 years before, and then Peter and Jude come along and write their letters probably closer to 70 AD. All right? So that material was all available. Yeah, James.
Before asking questions, I should know this, but what are you referring to? You say a second temple Jew?
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah.
Were you here 2 weeks ago? No, thank you for doing it. Terry, my wife Terry, gets on me all the time because I keep saying that. She says, people don't understand. So, Second Temple Judaism, so after the first temple was destroyed, when Babylon came and took over Jerusalem and they destroyed the temple around 500 or so, I don't know when that was exactly, 600 BC. Then they were taken off into captivity, and then they were held in captivity. They came out of captivity. King Cyrus let them go home. They go home. They rebuild the temple. All right, and so when they rebuild the temple around 500 BC, after they come out of captivity, that's the second temple. Okay, so now that we're talking about and the Judaism of the time, after they come out of exile, things have changed. And Anthony spent a lot of time talking about how all the text and everything is it's written out of the original Hebrew, goes into Aramaic, and it passes through all this stuff. While they're in exile, as they're passing because they don't have the scrolls anymore, and as they're passing things down to the next generations, things begin to get kind of woppy. So Second Temple Judaism, it's important to know the distinction between ancient Israelites up until the point of the Second Temple Judaism, and that period stretches from around 500 BC up to the first century, because the Second Temple was destroyed when? 70 AD. So the Second Temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and then everything changes again. Yes?
I've always wondered who humankind is, the women of humankind. What are we talking about here?
Non-divine.
Okay.
So human.
You're talking about Genesis 6.
Well, I don't know exactly where it's held, but it is human, yes.
So do you have something other than that you think it could be?
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
You keep using the term, they married women of
Humankind. Okay.
Okay, we are taught that Adam and Eve came and they populated the world.
Yeah.
Where did humankind come? Are they also descendants of Adam and Eve?
Yes.
And did they just completely fall off not off the face of the earth, did they just fall away from God's teachings and whatever? Were they I don't know, evil to, how did they become quote unquote humankind? Which doesn't sound like it's a real thing.
God's original plan, his original creation. Father, Spirit, Son exist eternal, and then God said, let us. He's talking about the tribunal unit. Let us go to, and they created the heavens and the earth and man, humankind. Okay, so Adam was the first of that, and from Adam came Eve, and that is humankind. We also know that God also created, so that's humankind on the earth. God also created other creatures in heaven, and they're divine, because we know there's angels. We just talked about Raphael and Michael, and just do all your reading through the Old Testament. There's all these signs about other Elohim, the Hebrew word for divine. Okay, so there is this heavenly realm, and there is this earthly realm. So when Anthony and I use that term, when we use the term humankind or divine, we're talking about divine is the heavenly realm, the human kind is the earthly realm.
So these are our descendants of Adam and Eve.
Yes. Yes.
The human wives they're talking about are the humankind that the bad angels married.
Yes.
Yes.
So like I started out and I said there's Adam and Eve. Okay, that's the beginning of humankind, Adam and Eve. From there came Cain, Abel. Okay, and Abel dies. Seth is replaced. And then from those two men, as they have relations with other women, then we have, yes, I wasn't going to use that term, but yes, I've already created enough controversy today. But as they begin to have relations with women, then all of humankind flows from Cain and Seth.
So the angels were all giants?
Do what?
The angels were all giants?
No. The angels, the original, the 200, they're the watchers. So thank you, Rick. So let's get terminology correct. Again, I flew through this, so I'm glad you're asking the questions. So the 200 that descend from heaven are angels. They're divine.
They're the watchers.
And we call them the watchers. That's what First Enoch calls them. He calls them the watchers. Because their role was a divine role. They were created to be divine. They are in heavenly realm. They have a vocation, and it is to be watchers over humankind.
And they weren't supposed to marry anybody.
Their role was to watch over humankind. It was not to defile the flesh. What did I tell you? The three words we're going to look at later that we need to pay attention to? Defiling the flesh, defiling authority, and blasphemy of the holy ones. And the holy ones are angels. And this is coming right out of the Bible.
So do you think all these giants were destroyed in the flood?
That's a great question, Donna.
I never heard about giants except for David and Goliath. Not a giant, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. So as you start talking, there are lots of terms for the Nephilim in the Old Testament. Rephaim, and I can't think of the other terms. That's one of them. But there's several others, and this is all a lineage of the original giants that are spawned from this. So Genesis 6 is pre-flood. Okay, so Genesis 6 is telling what caused God to be angry and want to destroy all flesh, including birds and animals and creeping everything. He said, I'm going to wipe it all out. So, and we're suggesting that the Bible states that what started all of this was the fall of the angels, creating the Nephilim. The Nephilim, which is a byproduct of angels coming out of their vocation, coming out of what they were created to do because of autonomy and wanting to be in charge and control and do their own thing. And so when they did that and they defiled women, because there's nothing in the text that said the women were all for this. When they came and defiled their flesh with these women, that created the giants, the Nephilim. You can look at there's all kinds of things about how big the giants were. I've looked at a lot of different things. Most of the things that I have found, they're anywhere from around 11 to 16 feet tall. And there's some that say they're even, we're not talking about people that are 6'2". We're talking, yeah. And if you look at a graphic of what somebody 16 feet tall looks like up to somebody that's 5 foot tall, it's pretty amazing. And it's not only just their size, it's what's going on inside here. Okay? Because it just ain't right. It's just not normal. It's not what we were created to be. See, this is defiling the order of things, the way God created things to be, in perfect order, in perfect harmony. And that all went to hell in a handbasket, beginning with Adam and Eve's decision in Genesis 3. That's the beginning. But it doesn't really all hit the fan until the fall of the angels. And that is when all evils, when you go into Enoch and read what all happens with these giants, they come in and they start devouring the land. They devour the animals. They devour all of God's creation. They start eating on humans, and they just can't stop. And then they get to a point where they start eating on each other. And that's what when we got into Enoch 10, it was talking about, how these evil giants started devouring one another. And it's because of an order or an edict that God gave to one of the angels to go down and to have them to do this and to shorten their lives. Now, I'm trying to get to your question, because it's a good question. I don't know that I have a real good answer for. So, and Anthony, jump in here if I say something that you think differently. But the flood, the intent of the flood was to wipe out all of that badness, including the Nephilim. But the spirits of the Nephilim were still there and were still roaming about. And so even after the flood, then when men started repopulating, there were still the evil spirits. Where do you think the demons come from? In Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The demons that Jesus exorcised out of people. The demons that Paul and the apostles took out of people. Where do those demons come from? They're real, folks. These aren't just stories. They're real. I think they're around until the second judgment. That's my opinion.
When you look at how many people were alive on earth, in the first century, and how many people now, it's not, unusual to think that we don't know about evil spirits. There just aren't enough of them anymore.
Or we don't want to acknowledge or recognize them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We can't see them.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
the other thing that, I know you're gonna get there, we're gonna run out of time. So, the other thing that you have, the flood destroys the physical, but what Enoch says is the spiritual beings, the evil spirits, that they will be called from now on. The evil spirits are still there. And then after the flood, you have the Tower of Babel event. Well, here you have the division of the nations. Now you have the Jewish Israelite nation, but then you have the other nations that when you read through the events of the Israelite nation from then on, you see the evil that is going on in the other nations. And so what a lot of commentaries that read this, the evil spirits that survived the flood then go to the other nations and live within the other nations. One of those nations being Cain's nation, the Canaanite. And so that when the Israelites show up in the land of Canaan, you see the giants again. Because the connection there is that the evil spirits that survived the flood show up in Cain's descendants. In Canaanite, when the Israelites show up and they go, hey, we know these guys. They were of old before the flood. And so Enoch ties all that together. And so then when you get to Jesus and you have the evil spirits and Jesus is casting out Legion, who has multiple evil spirits, and they say, don't send us to darkness. Look, there's pigs. Let us go there. And what the commentators will say is, Okay, the evil spirits know where the other angels went. They're in darkness, kept in chains. It's just what Jude says, it's what Peter says, it's what Paul says. And those evil spirits that Jesus encounters, they're like, hey, we don't want to go there. How about the pigs? And so Jesus let them go to the pigs. And so all that ties into what Jess and I will eventually get to, hopefully, is there is a whole nother realm that is going on that we are not focused on, and that we ignore, that the readers of Jude, they did not ignore those, right?
And it was a history to them. Why do you think that as the Israelites are coming out of Egypt and they're on their way and crossing over all of these bad lands to get to their good land, why do they have all of these wars? Why do they go in and kill men, women, and their children? And not only most of them, all of them. They're commanded to go in and wipe out the village, completely wipe it out.
They were descendants of
They were going in to wipe out the Nephilim, because there still could be remnants of the Nephilim, and it's in certain areas that we're talking about.
But once they kill them, are they gone? Or does their spirit live
Their
on?
spirit lives on.
Oh,
That kind of gives a new
Doesn't it?
look to people that say, if God is so loving, why would he go and kill all these?
Doesn't it?
Absolutely.
As we started out at the very beginning, this study has not changed either one of our theology, one iota, not at all. But it will change the way you read Scripture.
I could read the Bible. I could get a hold of 50 Bibles today. Where do you find Enoch?
Ethiopian canon has it, right? There's the Ethiopian canon.
Do what? Oh, you mean First Enoch?
Yeah, where do you find these things? Y'all can read.
Amazon.
Amazon.com.
You can get that on.
On the internet.
You can go on. Yeah, it's on the internet. You don't have to buy a book. It's there. It's been around for 2,400 years, so it's not like it was just published last year.
It sounds like fascinating reading.
It is. And so I highly encourage you to get a copy of sometimes it's referred to as the books of Enoch, because First Enoch has 5 books within it, 5 sections, 5 books. And get into a study, and I was going to get into this later today, but let me just go ahead and, I told y'all about reversing Herman. A lot of this that we're talking about we started all this long before I got this book. This is a book by Dr. Michael S. Heiser. You can come up here and take a picture of this or whatever, and take it with you. But this whole thing this is the only work that I know of that's available that does this. It ties together Enoch, First Enoch. It ties the story of Enoch together with the Watchers and the forgotten mission of Jesus Christ. We haven't even got to the forgotten mission of Jesus Christ. And that's the most awesome part of all of this, and I can't wait until we get in there, because
You can't leave us with this whole evil spirit thing. Leave us with the
so what I'll leave you with is the whole mission of Jesus Christ is reversing what happened on Mount Hermon. When Jesus goes to Caesarea Philippi and he asks Peter, well, who do you say I am? And Peter says, you're Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And he looks at Peter and says, on this rock I will build my church. He's not saying on Peter I'm going to build my church, and so Peter becomes the first pope. No, he's standing at Caesar Philippi, Mount Hermon, the northern kingdom of Bashan, where all the evil is associated with, back to the early Israelites and the Mesopotamians. If you go all the way back, it is the land of evil. He's standing there. There's a cave behind him, and he's talking about, and the gates of hell shall not be able to withhold. Now, which side of the gate do you think that lock is on? Which side?
the outside.
So most people in the church think that what he's talking about is the gates, that Satan will not be able to penetrate the church. He's saying the gates of hell will not be able to withstand us. because we are taken over. And after his resurrection, when he goes, after he's resurrected and in the Spirit, he goes down into where the spirits are held in prison. He's going to declare, you've lost. And our role is, if we're going to pick up our cross and follow him, we're willing to go through those gates with him. We're willing to go out to the nations and take that message. We're not to come in here, shut the doors, and say, Satan can't bother us in here. That's where we're going. But enjoy the journey along the way. It's fun. There's so much to learn here. And the reason that we want you to do this, once you start seeing this and thinking this way, it's going to change the way you read Scripture. It's also going to change the way that you might answer somebody when they come and say to you, well, I wouldn't love a God who would do that. I think we're past due, aren't we? See y'all next week.